Is this how you think of old age? Or this? If you think of old age as a time of inevitable decline, you're probably relying on stereotypes that no longer hold true. The truth is, people are living longer all the time. And rather than retiring to their rocking chairs, older people are enjoying healthy, active lives. How do stereotypes about aging measure up to the truth? What are the real physical, social, and psychological changes that people should expect as they age? And how can the decisions you make now help ensure that you enjoy a healthy, productive old age? Old age, and ultimately death, are the concluding stages of a process that begins when a single fertilized cell undergoes a number of divisions within the mother's uterus. As the tissues of the fetus become more specialized and a skeleton forms, the organs undergo a series of changes in preparation for birth. In infancy, babies grow rapidly. As their mental and muscular skills develop, they are able to roll over, grasp objects, crawl, stand, and walk. In childhood, mental abilities increase and memory is strengthened as language skills develop and schooling begins. Adolescence begins with the onset of puberty, during which the sex organs develop and a rapid growth spurt occurs. Adulthood begins around the age of 20. By then, all body systems are fully mature and full height has been reached. After about age 30, traditional signs of aging begin to appear and become more pronounced between the ages of 40 and 65, the generally accepted beginning of old age. Old age itself is divided between the young old, ages 65 to 74, the middle old, ages 75 to 84, and the old, ages 85 and over. Aging is defined as the life changes that occur as a person grows older. But since everyone ages differently, gerontologists, the people who study the aging process, have developed several more specialized ways to measure age. Biological age refers to the relative age or condition of a person's organs and body systems. Chronologically, these athletes are in their 70s, but biologically, their cardiovascular systems could be closer to those of people in their 40s. Psychological age refers to a person's level of maturity, coping abilities, and capacity to adapt to life's challenges. Social age refers to a person's habits and roles relative to society's expectations. Your taste in music probably reflects your social age. And your grandparents' taste probably reflects theirs. Legal age is used to determine rights and responsibilities, such as voting, driving a car, and eligibility for Social Security. And functional age refers to the way people compare to others of a similar age. Functional age is determined by such things as heart rate, skin thickness, hearing, and ability to perform certain tasks. How would you define the age of the older people you know in terms of these measurements? Not only are there various ways of measuring how people age, but throughout world cultures, different societies regard aging in various ways. In Asian cultures, older people are regarded with great reverence and respect. Similarly, in Native American culture, grandparents are respected as repositories of wisdom and knowledge who perform the vital function of passing down the culture's oral traditions from generation to generation.
When you hear it, your grandma says, "I'm going to tell you once, you better listen." And when you know she means what she's going to say, you will listen. But who else is going to sit there and tell you that story over and over and over again but someone who has that grandmother's love? Children, they love that repetition. That's where those hikos, those fairy tales come in. My grandmother would tell them the same way, with the same influx, the same emotion, every single time. She was almost like a record when she told it. And those stories were taught to her by her grandmother. So when her grandmother was born back in the early teens, 1815 or something like that, 1817. And where she heard them was probably from her grandmother, to the dawn of time, where that language even evolved.
Americans have tended to be a youth-worshiping culture that dreads old age as a time of infirmity and decline. But actually, the vast majority of Americans enjoy full and productive lives throughout their older years. In fact, old age is a time for continued learning and emotional growth, as well as deepening experience and knowledge. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the Elder Hostel program, which gives older people a chance to continue lifelong learning.
Elder Hostel is a one-week-long, typically one-week-long class that brings senior citizens. They've changed the age limit recently, but it used to be that they were generally in their 60s and 70s, occasionally in their 80s, and rarely, but importantly in their 90s. Bring them to a college campus and offer a college-level course. And I think that these are very intensive in the sense that you kind of compact what would normally take place in a regular college class over a longer period of time into just 1 week. We meet many, many hours each day. In fact, I think we calculated it out once, and it presents about half to two-thirds of a semester's worth of teaching in a week. The program is really kind of a clearinghouse and also a great proponent of education for senior citizens. They're an active part of, I think, a more general lobbying group to try to claim the fair share of resources and attention for seniors. I think that the particular attribute of this group that's so admirable is the idea that education doesn't stop at any arbitrary point, and I think that our experience certainly bears that out. It's just, I think, arbitrary to decide that after a college degree is given that education is over, and I think that our experience in Elder Hostel has indicated that in many ways the older population of students has advantages compared to the younger population. We notice that, for example, in older students who come to Hampshire, who quite frequently turn out to be extraordinary. It's almost as if that extra experience that you bring to the task of education turns out to be terrifically profitable in making for possibilities that are, I think, a little bit more difficult for students who are 16, 17, 18 years old to sometimes come by. One of the really exciting parts of teaching in Elder Hostel is having students want you to stay longer, being excited when class runs over rather than distressed, being full of questions, and also being not passive, but rather active recipients of the information, so that if you say something they don't like, you find out about it rather quickly. They're very good about associating whatever it is that you're teaching with either life experiences or previous educational training that they've enjoyed over their sometimes many years. There are age factors, but I think they're mostly all to the credit of the elders in the sense that they come with more ammunition, they come with more experience, they come with more perspective. I would say almost never do I believe that there's some limitation that's imposed by the age of the students. I think time imposes limitations, to be sure, but I think that they mostly have only advantages, it seems to me.
What might you be able to learn from the participants at an Elder Hostel? More and more people in the United States are viewing old age as a stage of life that offers continuing intellectual and emotional growth. At the same time, the age distribution of our population is also changing as greater numbers of people reach retirement age. As a result of the baby boom following World War II, during the 1960s, over 35% of the population was under 18. Only about 10% was over 65. Today, those baby boomers are either planning their retirement parties or planning for retirement. By 2030, this generation will have reached old age. And thanks to modern nutrition and medical care, for the first time in history, the elderly population will outnumber the youthful population in this country. In addition, the elderly population will be older and live longer than ever before. What social, economic, and ethical ramifications do you think the graying of America will have on our society? No one knows exactly what causes our bodies to age. Perhaps the human body, like any machine, simply wears out. Perhaps our cells are programmed to reproduce only a certain number of times before they die. Or perhaps the body's immunity system is to blame, as our immune systems become less efficient and our bodies more prone to disease as we age. Or maybe the cells in the body fail to function properly, causing organs and systems to break down. Whatever the biological causes of aging, some people seem to age more gracefully than others. According to many psychologists, successful aging involves maintaining emotional as well as physical well-being. Those who are best able to cope with and adapt to challenges throughout their lives are most able to remain mentally healthy and engaged with friends and favorite pursuits as they age. A unique combination of physical and psychosocial factors causes each of us to age at different rates and in different ways. But in general terms, there are a variety of changes you can typically expect as you age. Many of the physical changes that accompany aging are visible and familiar. Skin becomes thinner and more pale and loses elasticity. Wrinkles appear and deepen. Body fat is redistributed away from the limbs and into the trunk region of the body. The lens of the eye yellows and loses transparency, while the pupil begins to shrink, leading to a need for bifocals and trifocals. Hearing diminishes, along with the other senses. Both men and women experience sexual changes as they age. But older people need not give up sexual pleasure and intimacy. Like everything else in our lives, our sexual expression may change, but not necessarily our desire for intimacy. It may make you uncomfortable to think of your parents and grandparents dating. The truth is that sex remains an important part of life for people of all ages. Can anything be done to slow the physical effects of aging and avoid some of the diseases associated with old age? Absolutely. Remember the old standbys of good health: a balanced diet, regular exercise, managing stress, protecting yourself from the sun, and avoiding tobacco and excessive alcohol use. And it's never too soon to start. Old age may seem a long way off, but the health habits you establish now will affect your health as you age. Another excellent reason to stay healthy and fit. One condition that you can do a lot toward preventing is osteoporosis, a disorder that results in weakened, porous, and easily fractured bones. It is caused by the loss of minerals, particularly calcium, in the bones. Although osteoporosis is usually thought of as a disease of the elderly, it may already have begun to affect you. Several factors increase your risk for osteoporosis. Sex. Osteoporosis occurs in both sexes, but is more common in women than in men. Age. The risk increases with age. Low bone mass. Early menopause. Thin, small-framed body. Race. Whites and Asians are at higher risk than blacks, who usually have heavier bone mass. Lack of calcium in your diet. Lack of physical activity. Cigarette smoking. Excessive alcohol or caffeine consumption. And heredity. Fortunately, you can reduce your risk of osteoporosis by building the bone mass within your genetic limits. That means regular exercise of weight-bearing joints, maintenance of strength and flexibility, and calcium primarily from dairy products, leafy green vegetables, and other food sources. But don't wait for old age to increase your calcium intake. Do it now, because increasing calcium intake in childhood and early adulthood appears to be quite effective in reducing your risk. While many of the physical diseases of old age can be avoided with good health habits, mental deterioration is not inevitable either. As the Elder Hostel participants prove, elderly people can learn and develop skills as well as younger people. What they might lack in speed, they make up for in practical knowledge and experience. The disorientation and memory failure that many associate with aging are often due to misuse of over-the-counter or prescription drugs, or of diseases like Alzheimer's, which affects over 4 million Americans a year, and for which there is as yet no cure. However, a number of issues can affect the emotional strength of the elderly, including the potential for depression and alcohol abuse, possible drug interactions, misprescribed drugs, and the efficacy of vitamin and mineral supplements. One of the major challenges for our society as a whole and for families is caretaking. Virtually all elderly people eventually need assistance from children, other relatives, friends, and neighbors. In our busy society of two working parents who have waited until later in life to have children, care of an elderly parent must often be juggled with the care of young children, adding even more stress to the lives of people in what's sometimes called the sandwich generation, middle-aged people caring for young children and for elderly parents at the same time. And what about when the elderly person needs more than just assistance with errands and daily tasks? What about when he or she faces a terminal illness? No one wants to think about death, especially the death of a loved one. But death is both inevitable and the final stage in the life process. As with attitudes toward aging, different cultures view death in different ways. In Mexico, for example, death is seen as a passage to a better state of being. It is something to be celebrated rather than feared. In the United States, many Americans experience discomfort when faced with death and dying. On the one hand, we are fascinated by the large-scale and impersonal deaths we see sensationalized on the news and in films and television. But when confronted with a friend or relative who is dying, many Americans avoid speaking about death. We act as if nothing is wrong or give false reassurances. Such uneasiness wasn't always the case. Before the 20th century, when infections and accidents took the lives of people of all ages, and when the sick were taken care of at home rather than in hospitals, people were far more used to, and hence more comfortable with, being in the presence of death than most of us are today. But as medical advancements changed individual quality of life and the lifespan, so too did it change the role of hospitals.
We went to the hospitals just to die. And then we've become so sophisticated and so technologically advanced that in the 40s and 50s and 60s, we went to the hospitals, and our hospital stays were very long. And if we were dying, we may spend the last month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks in the hospital setting during the dying process. And one of the things that we did was made sure that we're trained to make you better, and we're going to give you all of these medicines and these sophisticated kinds of things, because that's what we do. That's what, do no further harm is the Hippocratic Oath.
While no one second guesses the advances that have helped prolong life and prevent illness and disease, people have begun to question using heroic measures to eke out a few more weeks for a terminally ill patient, prolonging the dying process and the patient's pain and suffering. As more people reject the idea of a high-tech death in a hospital, the growing hospice movement offers an alternative.
Hospice is the care of the dying. Hospice is to allow people and assist people to die with dignity. And the focus of hospice is to allow people to be in the so-called preferred home environment after lots of things have already happened. Most of the patients that are on the hospice program are patients who have terminal illnesses. Most of them are cancer patients who have had a full range of treatment, chemotherapy, radiation therapy, all of the kinds of things that we offer cancer patients to assist them. Cancer is not necessarily a terminal illness, but in some cases that in fact is the case. When two physicians have decided, and the client and the patient, we call them clients, and the patient has decided to